My professor tried to correct my own language, so I corrected her instead. I got into a huge argument with my college professor because I refused to use the word Latinx in my Spanish essay. And the craziest part? I'm literally Latina. I grew up speaking Spanish at home. My grandma came from Mexico when she was 20. Spanish isn't just something I studied, it's my first language, my culture, my identity. Last month, in my Spanish literature class, we had to write an essay about gender roles in Latin American poetry. I turned mine in like normal. When I got it back, it was covered in red ink. Every single time I wrote Latino or Latina, my professor had crossed it out and replaced it with Latinx. At the bottom, she wrote, "Please use inclusive language. See me after class." I was confused because I literally used the correct Spanish terms. After class, she pulled me aside and told me my language was outdated and potentially offensive. She said Latinx was the proper term now, and that I needed to rewrite my entire essay using it. I tried to explain calmly that actual Spanish-speaking people don't use that word. It doesn't even work in Spanish. You can't pronounce it properly. She cut me off and said, "Language evolves. We need to be inclusive of non-binary individuals." I told her, "I understand inclusion, but you can't just rewrite a whole language that millions of people speak. My own grandmother wouldn't even understand what that word means." That's when her tone changed. She said, "Well, your grandmother's generation had problematic views on a lot of things." That's when I got mad. Don't talk about my grandma like that. She lived through things you couldn't imagine. The word Latina isn't hurting anyone. But she doubled down, said if I wanted to pass her class, I had to use academically appropriate terminology, which apparently meant ignoring actual Spanish and replacing it with something created outside the culture. I went home and told my mom. She laughed so hard she almost choked on her coffee. She said, "Mija, that woman is crazy. We are Latina. That's our language. Tell her to learn Spanish before trying to change it." So the next class, I came prepared. I brought articles from real Latin American writers and linguists explaining why Latinx doesn't work in Spanish, how it's often seen as cultural imposition rather than inclusion. During discussion, I raised my hand and asked my professor one simple question. "Do you speak Spanish fluently?" She got defensive and said that wasn't relevant. I said it absolutely was relevant if she was going to correct native speakers. That's when other students jumped in. One girl accused me of being insensitive. I told her I wasn't. Spanish already has neutral ways to speak. We don't need to force an English-based word into it. Another guy said I was resisting change. I asked him if he was Latino. He said no. So I told him maybe he should listen to people who actually speak the language before deciding what's best for it. At that point, other Latino students started backing me up. One girl said her parents thought Latinx was ridiculous. Another said nobody in his family had even heard of it. By the end of class, my professor was furious. She told me to come to office hours. When I got there, the department head was sitting with her. They said my behavior was disruptive and disrespectful. I said no. What's disrespectful is telling native speakers how to identify themselves. Then I showed them something. Our university's Latino Student Union had already posted about this issue months ago. Over 40 students had signed a letter asking professors to stop forcing them to use Latinx. The department head looked at her and asked why this hadn't been reported. She had ignored it. In the end, she had to apologize to the class and announce that students could use whatever terms they felt comfortable with. So tell me, was I wrong for standing my ground? Or is it crazy that someone who doesn't even speak the language tried to control how we use it? And where do you draw the line between being inclusive and erasing someone else's culture?